I'm Audrey, 27 years old, and I never thought I'd wake up in a hospital bed with metal rods in my legs only to hear my mother's voicemail saying they were boarding a plane to Italy. The crash had left me broken, but nothing hurt worse than hearing her casual voice announce, "We're off to Rome with Ethan. Don't bother calling us while we're there." My own parents abandoned me when I needed them most, using my money for their dream vacation. What they didn't expect was that their Roman holiday would cost them everything they had. Before I share how I turned this betrayal around, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button if you've ever had to teach family a hard lesson, and subscribe to hear how I canceled more than just their return flight. Growing up in suburban Chicago, my family seemed picture perfect from the outside. My father, Gerald, worked as a high school history teacher, my mother, Diane, ran a small bookkeeping business from home, and my younger brother, Ethan, was the star basketball player everyone adored. I was the quiet, studious one who excelled academically, but never quite garnered the same attention or praise my brother received. Still, I believed we were close. Family dinners were mandatory. Weekend trips to Lake Michigan were our summer tradition, and holiday gatherings were always elaborate affairs with extended family. My parents had always emphasized education, so when I received a full scholarship to study computer science at the University of Illinois, they were proud. But looking back, their pride seemed more attached to the fact that my education wouldn't cost them anything rather than my actual achievement. While they attended every one of Ethan's basketball games, they skipped my college graduation because it conflicted with his regional tournament. After college, I landed a job at TechFusion, a growing software company in Chicago. I started as a junior developer but quickly proved myself, rising through the ranks to become a senior software engineer within 4 years. My salary grew substantially, and by 25, I was making 6 figures. That's when the family dynamics subtly shifted. My parents had always struggled financially. Dad's teaching salary was modest, and Mom's bookkeeping business had dwindled as more people switched to accounting software. When I received my first significant bonus at work, I offered to help them pay off some credit card debt. They accepted with tearful gratitude, and I felt good about being able to support the people who raised me. But what started as occasional help soon became an expectation. Within 6 months, I was paying their mortgage. 3 months after that, I was covering their car payments. By the time I turned 26, I was essentially supporting my entire family financially. My parents retired early, claiming health issues that were never quite specified. Ethan dropped out of college, moved back home, and cycled through a series of part-time jobs, never keeping one longer than 6 months because they were beneath him. I was working 60-hour weeks, while my family enjoyed the fruits of my labor. Mom and Dad upgraded their modest home with a swimming pool and outdoor kitchen. Ethan drove a sports car I was making payments on. They took weekend trips to nearby states, sending me photos of luxury hotels and expensive restaurants, always with a "Thanks, Audrey" caption that felt increasingly hollow. The tension started building when I questioned some of their expenses. When I asked why they needed me to pay for Dad's golf club membership, he accused me of not wanting him to have any joy in his retirement. When I suggested Ethan look for full-time employment, Mom defended him, saying he was finding himself and that I was being unsupportive. Despite these red flags, I continued providing. I had a spreadsheet detailing all the monthly transfers, $4,000 for their mortgage, $800 for each of their car payments, $2,000 for general expenses, $500 for Ethan's career development, and countless extras for unexpected costs they'd spring on me. In total, I was giving them nearly $10,000 monthly, leaving myself with just enough to rent a small apartment and save modestly. 2 weeks before the accident, I had finally started setting boundaries. I told them I needed to cut back on their monthly allowance so I could save for my own home. The conversation did not go well. Mom cried, Dad shouted, and Ethan called me selfish. They reminded me of all they'd sacrificed raising me, how much they'd supported my education, and how families were supposed to take care of each other. I left their house feeling guilty, but determined to make changes. Then came the accident. I was driving home from a late night at work, exhausted but proud of completing a major project. A drunk driver ran a red light and slammed into the driver's side of my car at 50 miles per hour. I remember the screeching tires, the shattering glass, and then nothing until I woke up in the hospital 2 days later. The damage was extensive. Both legs broken, requiring surgical insertion of metal rods, for broken ribs, a concussion, and internal bleeding that required emergency surgery. The doctors told me I was lucky to be alive, but that my recovery would be long and difficult. I would need multiple surgeries, months of hospital stay, and intensive rehabilitation. In those first groggy hours after regaining consciousness, my first thought was of my family. I asked the nurse to call them, certain they would rush to my side when they heard how serious the accident had been. She told me they had been notified immediately after my admission and had visited briefly while I was unconscious. They had left no message about returning. I tried calling them myself, but the calls went straight to voicemail. It wasn't until the next morning that I received the message that would change everything about our relationship forever. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beeping of machines when my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. I assumed it was work checking in, so I held the phone awkwardly with my less injured arm and pressed play, putting it on speaker since holding it to my ear was too painful. "Audrey, hi honey, it's Mom." My mother's voice sounded cheerful, almost giddy. "Dad and I just wanted to let you know we're at the airport about to board our flight to Rome. We've been planning this trip for months, and now that Ethan's between jobs again, we decided to bring him along too. The doctors said you'll be in the hospital for a while anyway, so there's really no point in us sitting around Chicago when we could be seeing the Coliseum, right?" I heard my father's voice in the background. "Tell her not to call us while we're there. International roaming is expensive." "Oh yes," my mother continued. "Gerald says don't bother calling us while we're in Rome. The roaming charges are ridiculous, and we'll be too busy sightseeing anyway. We'll be back in 3 weeks. The hospital has our email if there's an emergency." There was a pause, then laughter that I recognized as Ethan's. "Ethan says thanks for the spending money. Ciao, Bella." The message ended, and I lay there in shock, the pain medications doing nothing for the new type of agony spreading through my chest. They had gone to Italy? While I was lying in a hospital bed with broken bones and internal injuries. And they'd taken Ethan with them? When Dr. Monica Lewis came to check on me an hour later, she found me sobbing uncontrollably. The physical pain had become unbearable as I'd refused to press the morphine button, some part of me feeling I deserved to hurt. She immediately increased my medication and sat beside my bed, her kind eyes filled with concern. "Your family?" she asked quietly. I nodded, unable to speak through the tears. "I've been a trauma surgeon for 15 years, she said, her voice gentle but firm. "I've seen all kinds of family reactions to accidents. Some camp out in waiting rooms for weeks. Others can't handle seeing their loved ones in pain and visit sporadically. But I've never—" She stopped herself. "They've gone to Italy," I whispered. "On vacation. With my brother." Dr. Lewis's professional composure slipped for just a moment, her eyes widening in disbelief. "I'm so sorry, Audrey." Word spread quickly among the hospital staff. The nurses became extra attentive, often stopping by my room even when it wasn't time for medication or vitals checks. One nurse, named Riley Thomas, spent her lunch breaks sitting with me, making me laugh with hospital gossip and stories about her 3-legged rescue dog. My hospital roommate, Samantha Wilson, a 60-year-old woman recovering from gallbladder surgery, witnessed my breakdown when I first heard the voicemail. She became fiercely protective, telling off a young resident who questioned why no family members were present to discuss my care plan. "She has family," Samantha had snapped.
Me.
"Now explain the treatment options again, and use smaller words this time." I tried calling my parents again that evening, thinking perhaps there had been some misunderstanding. Again, straight to voicemail. I sent text messages that showed as delivered but received no response. I even tried Ethan, thinking my brother might at least check how I was doing. After 3 attempts, he finally replied, "Can't talk. On gondola in Venice.
Mom says you'll be fine.
Nurses will take care of you. That's their job." That night, unable to sleep despite the pain medication, I found myself scrolling through social media. That's when I saw it, a photo posted by my mother 3 weeks earlier of her, Dad, and Ethan holding printouts of Italian airline tickets with the caption, "Counting down to our Roman holiday. 21 days until we say arrivederci to Chicago." They had planned this trip weeks before my accident. The timing wasn't unfortunate coincidence. They had chosen to go despite knowing I was seriously injured. Digging deeper into their social media posts, I found more evidence of their deception. My mother had posted in a private family group about their summer splurge and how they need to ask Audrey for a little extra this month. There were jokes about Rome being expensive and Ethan needing shopping money for Italian fashion. The final blow came when I checked my credit card statements online and discovered a charge of $15,000 to a luxury travel agency dated just 2 days after my accident. They hadn't just abandoned me. They'd used my own money to do it. The days following the discovery were the darkest of my life. The physical pain of my injuries seemed to amplify the emotional agony of betrayal. Each painful physical therapy session became a dual battle against both my broken body and my broken heart. I would grit my teeth through excruciating exercises, tears streaming down my face, while the physical therapist, a gentle giant named Marcus, offered encouragement I didn't believe I deserved. "You're doing great, Audrey," he would say. "You're stronger than you know." But I didn't feel strong. I felt foolish and used. As I slowly regained mobility, memories of previous betrayal surfaced like buried shrapnel working its way out of a wound. I remembered my 16th birthday when my parents had promised a special dinner, only to cancel last minute because Ethan had an unexpected basketball scrimmage. I had sat alone in our house with a store-bought cake, opening my own presents. There was the college parents' weekend they'd skipped because it conflicted with my father's golf tournament. "You understand, right, honey? You've always been so independent," my mother had said. Then there was my appendectomy 3 years earlier. They had visited briefly in recovery but left within an hour, explaining they had tickets to a concert they'd been looking forward to for months. "It's just an appendix," my mother had said. "It's not like you're dying." Each memory brought fresh waves of pain as I realized my family's dismissive treatment wasn't new behavior brought on by the stress of my accident. It was their normal, and I had been making excuses for them for years. The hospital staff became my surrogate family. Riley, the nurse who had been spending her lunch breaks with me, started bringing me homemade meals, claiming the hospital food would delay my recovery. Dr. Lewis checked on me daily, even when I wasn't on her rounds. The night janitor, an elderly man named Walter, would pause his mopping to tell me about his grandchildren and bring me contraband cookies from the staff room. Samantha had been discharged, but she returned to visit twice a week, bringing magazines and audiobooks to help pass the time. "My daughter thinks I'm at bridge club," she confided with a wink. "But I'd rather be here with you. You remind me of her at your age, except she was never as tough as you." I didn't feel tough. I felt hollowed out, a shell going through the motions of recovery, while inside I was still that 16-year-old girl sitting alone with her birthday cake. Meanwhile, the financial strain was becoming unbearable. My health insurance covered most of the medical expenses, but not all. The deductibles and copays were mounting, and I was still automatically transferring money to my parents' accounts each month because I hadn't had the emotional energy to stop the payments. And then there were the social media posts. My family was documenting every moment of their Italian adventure. Photos of my father and brother eating gelato by the Trevi Fountain. My mother posing in new designer sunglasses outside boutiques on the Via Condotti. Ethan in a new leather jacket, standing beside a rented Vespa. All with captions like "Living la dolce vita" and "When in Rome," without a single mention of me or my condition. The turning point came 3 weeks into my hospital stay, during a particularly brutal night when the pain medication wasn't quite cutting through. I lay awake at 3 in the morning, scrolling through yet another album of my family's vacation photos, when I came across one that broke me completely. My mother, father, and brother dining at an exclusive rooftop restaurant overlooking the Roman Forum, all raising champagne glasses in a toast. The caption read, "To freedom and new beginnings." I threw my phone across the room, where it hit the wall and clattered to the floor, screen shattered like my illusions about my family. The night nurse rushed in, alarmed by the noise. She found me sobbing, my entire body shaking with the force of the grief and rage finally breaking through. "They don't love me," I choked out between sobs. "They never did." The nurse, an older woman named Patricia, simply sat on the edge of my bed and held my hand, letting me cry until there were no tears left. When I had quieted to occasional hiccuping sobs, she spoke. "You know what I think," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I think anyone who would leave their daughter alone in a hospital to go on vacation doesn't deserve her tears. And they sure as hell don't deserve her money." Something shifted inside me at her words. The hollow feeling was replaced by something hot and determined. She was right. They didn't deserve my tears. They didn't deserve my money. And most importantly, they didn't deserve the power I had given them to hurt me. That night, as the first hints of dawn brightened the window of my hospital room, I made a decision. I deserved better, and I was going to make sure I got it. The following morning, I asked to speak with a hospital social worker. Jessica Martinez arrived that afternoon, a no-nonsense woman with kind eyes and a notebook full of resources. I told her everything, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "What you're describing is emotional abuse and financial exploitation," she said bluntly after listening to my story. "Just because their family doesn't make it acceptable. In fact, it makes it worse." Jessica helped me see the patterns I'd been blind to for years. The emotional manipulation, the guilt trips, the way they'd systematically isolated me from other relationships by demanding more and more of my time and resources. She provided reading materials about codependency and financial abuse and connected me with a therapist who specialized in family trauma. "Recovery isn't just physical," she told me. "The emotional healing is just as important, and sometimes harder." My next call was to Marcus Bennett, a financial advisor one of the doctors had recommended. He came to my hospital room the next day, laptop in hand and righteous indignation on his face after hearing my situation. "Let's look at exactly what we're dealing with," he said, pulling up spreadsheets of my accounts as I provided passwords and information. The picture that emerged was worse than I'd imagined. Beyond the monthly transfers, there were numerous credit card charges I hadn't authorized. My parents had access to most of my accounts, a setup I'd created years ago to make it easier to help them with bills. They had been using that access liberally, treating my finances as an extension of their own. "You're essentially bankrolling their entire lifestyle," Marcus said, shaking his head. "And from what you've told me about their spending habits in Italy, they have no intention of slowing down." We spent hours formulating a financial separation plan. It would need to be comprehensive and executed all at once to prevent them from moving money around once they realized what was happening. Marcus recommended a lawyer to help with any legal aspects of untangling our finances. Later that week, Benjamin Clark, the lawyer Marcus had suggested, visited my room. His expertise in family financial disputes proved invaluable as he outlined my options. "Since you're not dealing with elderly parents with cognitive issues, and there's no formal guardianship or power of attorney in place, you have every right to cut off financial support," Benjamin explained. "They might try to claim entitlement to your support, but legally, they don't have a leg to stand on." We discussed the potential fallout, including the possibility that my parents might try to take legal action against me. Benjamin assured me their case would be weak, but suggested documenting everything just in case. "Save the voicemail," he advised. "Screenshot the social media posts. Document all unauthorized expenses. If they try to paint you as the villain in this story, we'll have plenty of evidence to the contrary." While these preparations were underway, I received an unexpected visitor. My father's sister, Margaret, whom I hadn't seen in years due to a falling out between her and my parents, had somehow heard about my accident. "Your colleague Ashley from work contacted me," she explained, sitting carefully on the edge of my hospital bed. "She found me through your emergency contact list from years ago, before your parents made you remove me." Aunt Margaret revealed family secrets that helped complete the puzzle. My parents had a long history of financial irresponsibility, racking up debt and looking for bailouts. Before I had come into my career and money, they had burned bridges with various family members by borrowing money they never repaid. "They did the same thing to your grandfather," she told me, her voice tight with old anger. drained his retirement accounts for a cruise while he was in hospice care. I try to stop them, which is why we haven't spoken in years. She also shared that their rift with her had worsened when she'd refused to loan them money for a timeshare in Florida 3 years ago, around the same time I had received my promotion and raise. They had simply found a new source of funding me. I should have tried harder to warn you, she said, regret heavy in her voice. But Gerald threatened to cut me off from seeing you completely if I interfered. Aunt Margaret offered her guest house as a place for me to stay during my recovery after hospital discharge. It's all on one level, and there's a walk-in shower with grab bars. I had it renovated for Mom before she passed. With my physical recovery progressing and my support system expanding, I turned my attention to the emotional preparation for what I was about to do. My therapist, Dr. Rebecca Collins, helped me work through the guilt and fear that surfaced as I contemplated cutting financial ties with my family. You're not abandoning them, she assured me during one of our sessions. You're establishing healthy boundaries. There's a world of difference between the two. By the end of my 6th week in the hospital, the plan was in place. My parents and brother were scheduled to return from Italy in 4 days. I had a comprehensive list of actions to take, legal documents prepared, and emotional support lined up. The physical pain of my injuries had begun to fade, replaced by a calm resolve. The night before I was to execute my plan, Riley brought dinner and stayed late after her shift. We had grown close over the weeks, her daily visits becoming something I looked forward to with increasing warmth. Are you sure you want to go through with this? She asked as we shared a contraband pizza in my hospital room. It's not too late to change your mind. I looked down at my legs, still in braces but healing stronger every day, then back at her concerned face. I've never been more sure of anything, I said. They abandoned me when I needed them most. Used my money to do it. And showed zero remorse. If I don't do this now, nothing will ever change. Riley nodded, reaching over to squeeze my hand. Then I'm with you all the way. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time since the accident, ready to reclaim my life and finances when morning came. I woke up early the next morning, a sense of purpose energizing me despite my still healing body. Today was the day everything would change. Riley arrived before her shift started, bringing coffee and moral support. Ready? She asked, pulling a chair up to my bedside. I nodded, picking up my laptop. Let's do this. We started with the banking. Following Marcus's detailed instructions, I removed my parents as authorized users from all my accounts and changed every password. I canceled the automatic transfers that had been feeding money into their checking account each month. I moved the bulk of my savings to a new account at a different bank entirely, one they had no relationship with. Next came the credit cards. I called each company, reported the cards as compromised, and requested new cards be issued with new numbers. For the card that my parents and Ethan had taken to Italy, I specifically reported the recent charges as unauthorized, starting a fraud investigation process. Benjamin had advised this approach since technically, I hadn't given permission for them to charge a luxury vacation while I was unconscious in the hospital. The credit card company's fraud department is going to contact them, I told Riley as I hung up from the last call. That might be how they first realized something's wrong. The most satisfying moment came next. Using the airline website and the confirmation number I'd found in my email, I logged into the booking for their return flight from Rome to Chicago. My father had apparently used my email for the reservation while using my credit card. With a few clicks, I canceled their return tickets, receiving a partial credit to my account. They're going to be stranded in Italy? Riley asked, eyes wide. Only temporarily, I replied. They have their own credit cards. They'll just have to use their own money to get home for once. Next, we tackled the physical items. I had been paying for both my parents' car and Ethan's sports car. I called the leasing company and informed them I would no longer be making payments on vehicles that weren't in my possession. I arranged to have Ethan's car picked up from the airport long-term parking where he'd left it. The mortgage was trickier. My name wasn't on their house, so I couldn't do anything about the property itself. But I could and did stop the payments I'd been making. I also contacted their utility companies and removed my credit cards as payment methods. One by one, We went down the list, systematically dismantling the financial support structure I'd built for my family over the years. Cell phone plans, streaming services, club memberships, insurance policies, internet and cable bills. Everything I had been paying for, I either canceled or removed myself from financial responsibility. By midday, we had completed most of the financial separation plan. I felt lighter with each tie cut, as if I was physically removing weights that had been dragging me down. "What about their stuff?" Riley asked as we broke for lunch. "Is there anything of yours at their house you want back?" I thought about the jewelry my grandmother had left me, which my mother had borrowed years ago. There were also important documents and keepsakes in my old bedroom that I didn't want to lose access to. "There is, but I can't exactly go over there in my condition," I said, gesturing to my still braced legs. Riley grinned. "What if you had help? I'm off tomorrow, and my brother has a truck." The next day, while my family was still enjoying their final days in Italy, completely unaware of what awaited them at home, Riley and her brother Danny helped me execute the last phase of my plan. The hospital granted me a day pass, and with a portable wheelchair and a lot of careful maneuvering, we made our way to my parents' house. I still had a key, and the security code hadn't changed in years. We entered legally, with the specific purpose of retrieving only my personal belongings. Benjamin had provided clear guidelines on what I could legally take to avoid any accusations of theft. We gathered my documents first: birth certificate, social security card, old passports, tax returns. Then we collected my personal mementos, photo albums from my childhood, academic awards my parents had never bothered to display, gifts from friends they had dismissed as clutter. In my mother's jewelry box, I found my grandmother's pieces, including the pearl necklace she had worn on her wedding day and had specifically left to me in her will. My mother had claimed these as her own years ago, and seeing them again brought both anger and relief. "She wore this to a charity gala last year," I told Riley as I carefully placed the necklace in a small pouch. Posted pictures of it on social media talking about family heirlooms as if she hadn't taken it from me. In my father's office, I found financial documents that confirmed what Aunt Margaret had told me: years of mismanagement, loans from family members, even a second mortgage on the house I hadn't known about. It explained why they had been so desperate for my financial support despite living in a nice home and driving luxury cars. Their entire lifestyle had been built on debt, and more recently my income. The most surprising discovery came in Ethan's room. In his desk drawer, I found a business card for a real estate agent specializing in retirement properties in Florida, along with brochures for several communities. Paperclipped to these was a handwritten budget outlining how much they would need from Audrey each month to afford the move. They had been planning to ask me to fund their early retirement to Florida, while leaving me to pay off their existing mortgage. As we loaded the last of my belongings into Danny's truck, I took one final look at the house where I'd grown up. It held some good memories, buried beneath the more recent pain. But it no longer felt like home. Home was somewhere I had yet to find, but I knew now it would be built on my terms, with people who truly cared about me. Back at the hospital, Riley and Danny helped me organize my recovered possessions. Aunt Margaret came by later that evening to take the most valuable items for safekeeping until I was discharged. "You've done the right thing," she assured me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "It will be hard when they return, but remember you're not alone anymore." The final piece of my plan was creating a new support system. I reached out to colleagues I'd lost touch with due to my family's constant demands on my time. I reconnected with old friends from college. I accepted dinner invitations and made plans for after my recovery. I was rebuilding my life, piece by piece, with people who chose to be there for me. As I fell asleep that night, I felt not just physically stronger, but emotionally fortified as well. Whatever storm was coming when my family returned, I was ready to weather it. For the first time in years, I was standing up for myself instead of supporting everyone else. And it felt right. The storm broke 3 days later, earlier than expected. My phone exploded with notifications around 2 in the morning. Apparently, my family had attempted to check into their hotel in Florence, only to have their credit cards declined. When they tried to access their bank accounts, They discovered the changes I'd made. And when they attempted to contact me, they found themselves blocked on every platform except email, which I had kept open specifically to document their responses. The emails started angry and accusatory. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Fix this immediately."
Dad.
"Is this some kind of sick joke? We're stranded in a foreign country because of you."
Mom.
"You selfish bitch. I'm stuck in Italy with no money because of you." Ethan. As the night progressed and they presumably realized the extent of the financial changes I'd made, the tone shifted to manipulation. "Honey, if this is about us taking a vacation while you're in the hospital, we can talk about it when we get home. But right now, we need you to put the credit cards back so we can book our flights." Mom. "Audrey, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this isn't how family treats each other. Your mother is very upset and you know her blood pressure issues. Please fix this now." Dad. By morning they had moved to threats. "If you don't fix this right now, don't expect to be welcome in this family anymore." Dad. "I'm contacting a lawyer as soon as we get back. What you're doing is illegal." Mom. "You'll regret this, I promise."
Ethan.
I showed the emails to Benjamin, who assured me they had no legal grounds to stand on. "They're lashing out because they've lost control over you and your finances," he explained. "Stay strong and stick to the plan." I had prepared a single response, crafted with Benjamin's help, which I sent to all three of them. "I am recovering from life-threatening injuries in the hospital, where I've been for over 6 weeks. During this time, you chose to take a vacation to Italy using my credit card without permission, after explicitly telling me not to contact you during your trip. I have reclaimed control of my finances and will no longer be supporting your lifestyle. Any threats or continued harassment will be documented and shared with authorities if necessary. I am willing to discuss this further when you return, but only with a mediator present." Their responses were predictably outraged, but I didn't engage further. Instead, I focused on my recovery and prepared for the inevitable confrontation when they returned. It took them 5 days to make it back to Chicago, having had to book economy flights on their own limited credit and borrow money from friends to cover hotel costs until they could leave. Riley was with me when the hospital called to inform me my family was in the lobby, demanding to see me. "You don't have to see them today," she reminded me. "Or ever, if you don't want to." But I had prepared for this moment. "I need to face them," I said. "But I don't want to do it alone." Riley nodded. "I'll be right beside you." I asked the nurse to permit them to come up and requested security to be nearby just in case. Then I adjusted my bed to a sitting position, took a deep breath, and waited. They burst into the room like a small hurricane, all talking at once. My mother looked disheveled, my father red-faced with anger, and Ethan sullen. They fell silent when they saw Riley standing protectively by my side. "Who is she?" my mother demanded. "Tell her to leave. This is family business." "Riley stays," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. "She is the family who's been here for me while you were sightseeing in Rome." "How dare you?" my father sputtered. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Canceling our flights, cutting off our funds, embarrassing us with our friends who had to wire us money." "Embarrassing you?" I repeated, feeling a surge of the righteous anger that had been building for weeks. "You left your daughter alone in a hospital after a near-fatal car crash so you could take a vacation with her money, and you're worried about embarrassment?" "We had been planning that trip for months," my mother protested. "We couldn't just cancel everything because you had an accident. The doctors said you would recover." "I might not have," I said quietly. "I could have died while you were posing by the Trevi fountain. Did that ever occur to you?" A flicker of something like shame crossed my mother's face, quickly replaced by defensive anger. "You're being dramatic. You were never in danger of dying." "Actually, she was," Riley interjected, her professional nurse voice in full effect. "Audrey had internal bleeding and required emergency surgery. There were complications. The doctors discussed the possibility of putting her in a medically induced coma at one point. Where were you when they needed family to consult about her care?" "Oh, right, eating gelato in Venice." My family looked momentarily stunned, but Ethan quickly recovered. "This isn't about the accident," he sneered. This is about money. You've always been selfish with your success. God forbid you share a little with the people who raised you. Share? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Ethan, I've been paying for everything. Your car. Your career development funds that you spend on video games and bar tabs. The roof over your head. The food you eat. I haven't been sharing. I've been supporting all of you entirely. We're your parents, my father said, as if that explained everything. Of course you should support us in our retirement. You're both in your early 60s and in good health, I pointed out. Most people your age are still working. And even if you were retired legitimately, that doesn't entitle you to luxury vacations on my dime while I'm lying in a hospital bed. The argument continued, going in circles as they attempted every manipulation tactic in their arsenal. They tried guilt. After all we sacrificed raising you. They tried gaslighting. You're remembering things wrong. We've always supported you. They tried threats. You'll never see us again if you don't fix this. They even tried faux concern. We're worried about your mental state. Perhaps the head injury affected your judgment. Through it all, I remained calm, Riley's steady presence beside me a reminder that I wasn't alone anymore. Eventually, when it became clear their tactics weren't working, my father switched to negotiation. Fine. We shouldn't have gone to Italy while you were in the hospital. We admit that was inconsiderate, he conceded. But you can't just cut us off completely. We have bills due next week. I'm not cutting you off from a small allowance or extra spending money, I explained. I've been paying for your entire lives. More than $10,000 a month every month for years. That stops now. The color drained from my mother's face. But the mortgage, the cars.
You'll need to downsize, I said.
Sell the house.
Get jobs.
Live within your actual means, like everyone else does. Jobs, my father exploded. At our age? This is ridiculous. I found the Florida retirement community brochures in Ethan's room. I told them. Were you planning to tell me about that before or after you had me sign the checks? They exchanged guilty glances, confirming my suspicions. You were using me, I said, my voice breaking slightly for the first time. Not just financially, but emotionally. You took and took and took, and when I needed you just once, you abandoned me for a vacation that I paid for. Do you have any idea how that feels? No one spoke for a long moment. Then my mother, always the strategist, tried one last angle. Audrey, honey, we love you. We've always loved you. We made a mistake with the timing of the trip, and we're sorry. But don't throw away your family over one bad decision. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the mother who had raised me but a woman who had grown accustomed to using others to get what she wanted. And for the first time, I saw clearly how I had enabled that behavior for years. It wasn't one bad decision, I said softly. It was a pattern of choices that showed me exactly where I stand with you. And now I'm making my own choice. I reached for the folder Riley handed me, which contained documents Benjamin had prepared. These are the terms under which I'm willing to have a relationship with you moving forward, I explained, handing the folder to my father. I will not provide financial support beyond a one-time transition payment to help you adjust. I will consider attending family events if my boundaries are respected. I am open to rebuilding our relationship, but only with professional mediation and if genuine effort is made on all sides. My father flipped through the documents, his face growing darker with each page. This is insulting. We're your parents, not business associates. Those are my terms, I said firmly. Take them or leave them. And if we leave them, my mother asked, her voice tight. I met her gaze steadily. Then you leave me too. For good this time. They left without accepting the terms, storming out with threats and accusations. Ethan lingered in the doorway, a conflicted expression on his face. They'll lose the house, he said. Where am I supposed to go? You could try getting a job, I suggested. Being an adult. It's what most people do at 24. He shook his head, muttering something about family loyalty as he followed our parents out. When they were gone, I collapsed back against the pillows, emotionally drained but strangely peaceful. Riley took my hand. You did it, she said proudly. How do you feel? I considered the question carefully. Sad, I admitted, but also free. The months that followed were challenging but transformative. My physical recovery progressed steadily, with small victories that felt monumental. The first time I stood with the support of parallel bars. The day I took 3 steps with a walker. The morning I managed to shower without assistance. Each achievement marked not just physical healing but emotional strengthening as well. The situation with my family evolved in unexpected ways. As predicted, they had to sell the house, unable to make the mortgage payments without my support. My father, after weeks of angry emails and one particularly nasty voicemail about ungrateful children, eventually found a job teaching history at a community college. My mother, facing financial reality for perhaps the first time in her adult life, started working part-time at a local bookstore. Ethan's response surprised me the most. After couch surfing with friends for a month, he showed up at the rehabilitation facility where I had been transferred, awkward and defensive, but present. "I still think you're wrong about Mom and Dad," he said, shifting uncomfortably in the visitor's chair. "But what they said about you in the car after we left the hospital, it wasn't right." It was the closest thing to an apology I expected from him, and I accepted it as such. Over the following weeks, he visited occasionally, our conversations gradually shifting from family drama to his own struggles. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted during one visit. "Be an adult.
Get a real job.
Live without someone bankrolling everything." I could have said "I told you so" or reminded him that most people figured these things out without assistance. Instead, I offered something more valuable than money: guidance. "I know someone at TechFusion looking for an entry-level IT support person," I told him. "It's not glamorous, but it's steady work with good benefits and room to grow. I can put in a word if you're interested." He accepted, and to my surprise, took the opportunity seriously. It wasn't an instant transformation, but seeing him proudly show me his first real paycheck months later suggested a positive change was underway. My parents were slower to come around. There were attempts at manipulation, guilt trips disguised as reconciliation efforts, and occasional financial emergencies that always seemed to require my immediate assistance. Each time, I maintained my boundaries, referring them to the terms I had set out. 6 months after the confrontation in my hospital room, they finally agreed to meet with a family therapist. The sessions were difficult, with old wounds reopened and painful truths acknowledged. Progress was slow and nonlinear, with setbacks and breakthroughs occurring unpredictably. Healing isn't about forgetting or pretending the hurt never happened. Dr. Fiona Marshall, our therapist, explained during one particularly tense session. It's about acknowledging the pain, understanding its source, and choosing a path forward with clear boundaries and realistic expectations. As my physical rehabilitation continued, I found unexpected healing in helping others. I started volunteering with a support group for car accident survivors, sharing my experience not just with physical recovery, but with the emotional aftermath as well. Each Saturday, I would sit in a circle with others whose lives had been altered in an instant, listening to their stories and offering the understanding that only those who have lived through trauma can provide. The relationships I had begun rebuilding during my hospital stay flourished. Aunt Margaret became a regular presence in my life, our weekly dinners a chance to reconnect with the family history my parents had tried to erase. My friendships deepened as I learned to invest emotionally in people who reciprocated care and respect. And then there was Riley. What had begun as a compassionate nurse checking on a patient had evolved into something neither of us had expected. Our first official date was a wheelchair-accessible picnic in the hospital garden. By the time I was discharged from the rehabilitation facility, we were seeing each other regularly, building a connection based on mutual respect and genuine care. "You know what I first noticed about you?" she asked one evening as we cooked dinner together in the accessible apartment I had rented. "Even at your lowest point, you never lost your dignity. You were hurt, but never broken." 9 months after the accident, I returned to work part-time, grateful for an employer who had held my position and accommodated my ongoing recovery needs. My colleagues welcomed me back with a desk decorated with plants and a card signed by the entire department. My financial situation, which had taken a hit during my extended medical leave, was slowly stabilizing. Without the burden of supporting my family, I was able to rebuild my savings and even start looking at buying my own home. The irony wasn't lost on me that by stopping the financial drain of supporting my parents and brother, I was finally able to invest in my own future. 1 year to the day after the accident, I held a small gathering at my new apartment, a first-floor unit with wide doorways and an open floor plan that accommodated the occasional mobility aids I still sometimes needed. Riley was there, as were Aunt Margaret, Samantha from the hospital, several colleagues who had become friends, and, somewhat tentatively, my parents and Ethan. It wasn't perfect. The conversations sometimes stilted, old tensions occasionally rising to the surface. But it was real, a new kind of family dynamic built on honesty rather than exploitation. As we shared a meal together, I looked around at the faces of people who had chosen to be there, who had supported me through the darkest period of my life, and I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known was possible a year earlier. Later that night, after everyone had left except Riley, I stood by the window looking out at the city lights. "Penny, for your thoughts?" she asked, coming to stand beside me. "I was just thinking about how sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can lead to the best changes," I said. "If I hadn't had that accident, if my family hadn't abandoned me when I needed them most, I might never have found the strength to break the cycle. I might still be working myself to exhaustion to fund their lifestyle, while believing that was what love looked like." Riley took my hand, her fingers intertwining with mine. "And we might never have met." I smiled, leaning into her solid, comforting presence. That would have been the biggest loss of all. The journey hadn't been easy. My body still ached sometimes from the injuries, and my heart still carried scars from my family's betrayal. But I had learned that healing doesn't mean erasing the pain completely. It means growing around it, building a life where the pain is just one part of a much larger, richer story. If you've ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal or set boundaries with family who took you for granted, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Was there a moment when you realized you deserved better? What helped you find the strength to make a change? Like this video if you believe that sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into, and subscribe for more stories about finding strength through life's unexpected challenges. Remember, it's never too late to rewrite the rules of your relationships and build the life you truly deserve. Thank you for listening to my story.